Yeah, so welcome to the May meeting of Conservation Commission. We have one new face, one relatively new face. So that I will go around and just introduce ourselves. I'm Doug Bogan, Chairman.
Dan Cassidy, alternate.
Matt Woods. I'm not sure where I am, if I'm an official member of the board yet.
Have you taken the oath?
I have not. I've been away, so I just got it. So yeah, I haven't had a chance.
Yeah. I believe you're approved.
Yeah, I just have to
taken
do
the
the
oath.
oath.
You
Yeah.
just need to do that, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're here, but I don't think you're voting tonight. I guess Dan will be an additional voting member. So.
Steve Hobbs, I'm a member here.
In the back.
Hi, Matt Morgan. Special guest.
Nipple Lake Association. Yeah.
Let's see, I do the minutes. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So,
Jack Gale, Vice Chair and Treasurer.
Paul Parrish, Commissioner.
and we're just introducing ourselves and just saying who you are, where you're from.
Up the street? New York.
Yeah, hi. So, we've got two main topics tonight, and we'll have the other one first, so bear with us a bit. But I think we ought to go right into it. I think we discussed it at some bit a year ago that there was this issue on Nipple Lake with the shoreline damage. Yeah, go ahead. And at the time, it looked like DES was responding. They were requiring to do a restoration project, right? Or a plan.
Yep.
But it appears that not only have they not followed through, but things are getting worse. So Matt's going to tell us a little more about it.
Thanks for having me. Matt Morgan. My wife and I live, Susan is my wife's name, the butters directly north of 114 Flower, 128 Flower. Well, it's been quite a year. The house was purchased last April, and we've had a front row seat to the property essentially being torn to shreds. I don't know if anybody here has seen the pictures or actually been out to see the property, but it's quite an awful scene for those of us that care about the lake.
And this was a property that was previously occupied, had a house on it, but they're expanding.
Correct. It had an old camp on it. However, the owner of the property lived directly behind it on Kessler Road, Kessler Drive, and they would come down just to use the lake and then go back up. The camp is pretty much falling down.
Yes.
We can't pull up the pictures, so can you describe a little bit more other than the?
I might actually have a couple on my phone if you want me to pass my phone around, but I could certainly describe it. The property is at the very beginning on the south end of Nipple Pond. It is a very small 4/10 of an acre non-conforming lot. My understanding is the house was built in, or the camp that was there was built in the 40s. Probably hasn't been occupied since the 70s, by the look of it. Very steep from Flower Drive itself down almost to the lake before it flattens out. Evidently, there had been a previous owner 30, 40 years ago who did some filling without getting permission at the time. But the water still sort of seeps up, so the Nipple Pond should actually be bigger right there than it is. They filled in the section of the shoreline so they could have a little yard. That's my understanding. Again, I'm just to the north of it, and there is a house just south of the property that belongs to Darlene Moreau, Mark Moreau, who's the road agent for the town. Used to live there, so for some context. I assume everybody here has heard from, I'm here sort of for Linda and the Lake Association, Linda Brushett, who's the president of the Lake Association. I'm sure you probably are aware of all the work that's gone into the lake over the last decade or so to get rid of the cyanobacteria blooms. great work from the town, from everyone on the lake. I'm fairly new there. I've only been there 4 years. And from DES getting involved with that and getting us grant money. And so I've been working with Nipple Lake Association, New Hampshire DES, and I've been to all the municipal meetings on the property that have taken place. That's 2 zoning board meetings and 2 planning board meetings that have happened so far. I have a timeline, which may be more effective for you guys to look at after this, and I can just sort of summarize, but you're welcome to pass these around. I had to do this.
We actually have it up on the screen.
Oh, is that the
Probably
one?
not real readable.
Yeah, this is something that I drew up just because I didn't really have a good sense of when everything happened with the state and everything. I won't go through all the details, but just to summarize quickly, pretty much immediately when the owner purchased the property, he immediately clear cut the lot, tore down the existing house, and began excavating immediately. No permits, no applications, nothing. Immediately started doing that. The Lake Association immediately contacted New Hampshire DES to let them know and complain about the work that he was doing, which included clear cutting right down to the water. He had equipment essentially in the pond, which was obviously very disturbing. And as I mentioned, I had a front row seat to this every day, so it was pretty vexing.
And this is the owner himself doing it? It's not like a contractor?
It is the owner. He actually owned a construction company, but it wasn't as if he had the correct equipment on site to do it. So what would have taken 4 or 5 days if you had the right equipment in there, took 9 months. With his equipment running every single day. What else? So after that, DS did come out. They think that might be the letter of the documentation of the violation, which required a restoration plan in order for him to apply for a shoreline permit. In the fall, he submitted the shoreline permit application along with the restoration plan. It was eventually approved after a request for more information was sent back saying you've already destroyed a lot of the property. You plan on building within the 50-foot shoreline buffer. So come back to us with a plan that doesn't have that. The date, actually, interestingly enough, for the restoration to be done was last week. Nothing's been done. As you might have guessed. The first time I really, other than seeing it, knew what was being planned for there was at the first zoning board meeting when he was going for a setback variance from Flower Drive. It's supposed to be 40 feet. He was asking for 14 feet. The house he tore down was 900 square feet. His plan was to put a 3,600 square foot house on a 4/10 of an acre lot. With a septic system approved for 2 bedrooms in a 3,600 square foot house. Needless to say,
He's a contractor.
he's not only a contractor, he's been dealing with wetlands because he does helical piles, is my understanding, to raise properties that are, and honestly, in speaking with him, he made it very clear that he knew everyone at DES and that the project had already been greenlighted, so don't make any trouble. Was the long issue.
So he didn't have a permit. So
He had nothing.
Which he should have known, right? It's not like.
Oh, he definitely knew. He played dumb, and so there really wasn't any talking to him. Nice enough guy. Didn't have anything personally against him, but replacing that's 900 square foot house with a 36. That sort of raised the alarm bells when we first started getting involved with it. So we actually sent a public record request to DES asking for the permit application to see what was on his permit.
Did you also, I mean, he would have needed to file a new septic plan as well, which couldn't have been approved.
My understanding was the septic had been approved, and that was actually brought up at both the zoning board meeting and the planning board meeting, and the building the town building inspectors basically made it known that that's none of our business, it's only the state, so don't bring it up here. So, we dropped that, but, I really don't know that much specifically about the septic, other than what I saw initially. Got the plan, for the shoreland permit, and the plan that he submitted to the zoning board was not the same plan he submitted to the state. Raised more red flags.
Was the difference in the plan, the square footage?
The difference in the plan was not the square footage, it was the orientation of the house on the lot, which had setback implications. Especially since you can't really put a 3,600 square foot house without being within the wetland buffer. The only way he could do that was to get a variance for the frontage, so he was gonna be right on
I
flood.
was wondering, your timeline says that the planning board decided against the building permit due to insufficient road improvement.
Yeah, so really,
Even before that, there should have been 3,600 feet. It's a non-conforming lot.
well, we tried to bring that up at zoning, they wouldn't hear it.
It's not.
We tried to bring it up at the planning board, and they basically said, you should have brought that up at the zoning board, which we said we tried to. And then they said, it'll have to wait until the select board hears it. So all of this has to go through all the boards because it's a private road, it's my understanding. I had to do the same thing. So we saw that, we were disturbed by that, and we said, well, we're gonna just have to wait for the planning board meeting and the select board meeting. So in the meantime, we asked, we did a second record request, this time for the restoration plan, which they didn't provide the first time. They sent us the restoration plan, and the Lake Association did a comparison of the proposed plan to the current state of the property. There were, I think it was 12 out of the 18 trees that he was counting towards his, they do that, the tree count, you know the terminology better than me, but based on the size of the tree, whatever's within the 50-foot buffer, I believe he took 12 of the 18 trees down.
Actually, we have a graphic on that.
Do you have that?
Scroll down, I believe it's that same document. It's like page 4. Yeah. there you
Yeah,
go.
so this was the plan that was submitted. But then in walking around the property, all the trees in green were still standing. All the trees in red had been taken down.
And some of those are double, 2 trees.
Correct,
Yeah, so-
correct. And we're not talking saplings, we're talking 28-inch, 32-inch diameter trees. And you can see that that's just within the 50-foot buffer. He took a lot of other trees down on the property, but apparently DES is really concerned with those. So that graphic will give you an idea. So they either knowingly submitted a plan that was incorrect to DES, or they submitted the plan and then they took the trees down. We don't know the timing exactly of that, so we're not exactly sure what happened. We notified DES, I think the same time that we sent this information to the Conservation Commission. They actually did come out last week to look at it. And David Price gave a call to Kevin Fitzgerald, who is the Lake Association attorney, who indicated that there were going to be additional violations, and that they were going to send it back to the engineer and require a new plan with additional plantings being done. He didn't mention whether there were going to be any fines or violations. My interaction with DES communication has not been terrific. It's sort of been a unilateral. We send them information and we never hear back from them in any way, shape, or form.
I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah, and they actually alluded to that, which is fine, but at least acknowledge that you got the information and that you'll be looking into it and you should expect to hear back from somebody or not, but just no communication at all. So that's been kind of frustrating. In the meantime, there's been nothing done to the lot since the thaw. The erosion control has been put in place, it's deteriorating. There's several rips, in the erosion control blankets that were put down. He's got the trees that were on the property just piled up to burn right on the shoreline. Again, I'll send you guys again the pictures. Maybe you can distribute those if they haven't already seen them. So that's the abridged history without getting into the road association issues and all those sorts of things. From the environmental standpoint, those are really the main issues. Just sort of updates from the last week, and then I'll wrap up. We were actually informed that the owner is now in hospice,
Oh, great.
which obviously is horrible, and also horrible for the lake. Not to sound insensitive, but he also indicated that he's no longer moving forward with the building, which begged the question, well, what's going to happen now?
Does he have a family who lives with him?
He does. Apparently his sister has power of attorney and is the executor of the will, from my understanding. There was a representative, somebody who used to work with him and a good friend of his who I actually talked to yesterday. He came to the property. There were still skid steer pieces of equipment on the property, things that had to be taken off. I helped him load that stuff up, but in talking to him, I sort of asked him, what's going to happen next with the property? Has the family said anything? He indicated that he was pretty sure that they were going to sell it, but he hadn't heard anything definitive, and obviously with him just having been transferred to hospice, the owner being transferred to hospice, he hasn't had a lot of in-depth discussions.
Well, I mean, if they're going to sell it, I would assume there must be some kind of process where the property would be encumbered by the requirements for restoration.
Sure. So Kevin Fitzgerald did ask David Price that exact question. And David indicated that the violations would carry over to a new owner, and that it would need to be disclosed as part of the process.
Right.
David Price also indicated that they generally will work with a new property owner, since the property owner didn't actually do the physical damage, that they would work with them, explaining to them the types of things that would have to be done, and try to ease the burden on them as much as possible, but was still very concerned about the shoreline buffer itself. So, again, the timeline is there. You guys can digest that after this to see exactly when all this sort of stuff happened. But I'm happy to answer any questions or fill in any holes that I might have left out.
I think my question is, I understand that a lot of this is on the state, but it seems to me that there must have been some municipal regulations that would have been called into question by what was going on here. And I'd like to know why that wasn't addressed, what they were and why it wasn't.
Sure. All I can say to that is I came down one day for a plan, and I spoke with Jamie Jennison and John Huckins. They were here, and I had some questions because obviously we were dealing with someone who doesn't really play above board. And we were talking about setbacks, and I said, what happens if, right? This guy says he's going to build his house here, but he doesn't, he builds it there. They said that was really based, the foundation certification would deal with that. And I said, well, do they certify that before it's poured? And he said, no, afterwards. And I said, well, what happens then if it's poured in the wrong spot? And he said, it goes back to the zoning board and he'll ask for a variance. And I said, well, and honestly, I'm a straight shooter because if I hear before you again, you'll know that. I'm very disappointed with the building department and the role they took in this. They, and every chance, took the opportunity to ramrod his plans through the zoning board, through the planning board. They took over conversations. They were basically lobbying for him, which to me, you're in an office where you should not be doing that you represent the town, not the landowner. So that was a little bit disturbing, but I'm new to town, so I gotta deal with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of par for the course.
Okay, so this is-
You have,
Yeah,
but it's similar.
I think related to his question, they don't have a parallel set of rules that address things like the Shoreline Water Quality Protection Act, which he violated the hell out of. But usually they will tell you, yeah, there's an issue with that there, but I don't know if they will go and actually go to DES and do it for you. They did it to somebody on
No.
my lake who went in and clear cut a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And they sort of, they turned them over to DES. It's sort of, I think you're getting into this jurisdiction thing.
No, and I don't expect the municipality to try and get involved in that stuff, but usually there are restrictions on, on non-conforming lots, there are restrictions on what you can do in terms of expanding a footprint and things like that.
100%.
Yeah, that's why I asked why, when they had a problem with the road improvement, which is a recent addition to the.
Again, something we made every attempt at meetings to bring up, because my understanding was that you could build without a permit if you build within the same footprint. Once you go outside that, then you need to,
I don't know about without a permit.
well, you get a building permit, but without getting variances
Yes.
Yeah.
from zoning, et
Yes,
cetera.
because your place might have been not to the current setbacks, but they will let you put back on the same size.
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly. But again, we indicated, we're talking about a home that's gonna be 4 times the size. And there wasn't really any, there was never in a public meeting did anybody from any of the boards say, I'm really concerned about that size. That was something we were really planning to bring up with the select board, who, a couple of them have seen the property firsthand, and I know have their own concerns. But to us, it was very clear that on a non-conforming lot, you can't drastically modify the footprint.
What would the select board's role in this process be? I don't know how they get in. I mean, usually it's ZBA and planning.
Well, the road improvement thing, if you want to get a permit on a private road, they passed something several years ago.
10% of the.
10%, and you go to the select board to ask for leniency or whatever.
Yeah, actually, it goes to the planning board first, who
Yeah.
either recommends the building permit or does not recommend. They did not recommend the building
Yeah.
permit. He had his plan basically said, I'll do X, Y, and Z. He was planning on doing the work himself, never met with the road association. And the town basically was saying he has every right to do it himself without talking to the road association, which caused Kevin Fitzgerald to flip, basically. So he was going to meet with the road association when we found out he had been moved to hospice. They canceled all the meetings. And that was just last week. So that is the sordid tale. If any of you have strong stomachs, you're welcome to come out and take a look. I'm happy to have you on my property, and there's no trees left, so you can clearly see everything that he's done. But again, I very much appreciate being heard. We can work together. I hope if they do sell it, get someone who's willing to do all the restoration necessary. I just really don't know where that leaves us at this point, since it won't be going before the select board, since he's not asking for a building permit.
You're gonna find someone who's willing to do the restoration.
Correct.
And only put a 900 square foot.
Correct.
Unless because you only go so much more. I've got a similar sized house on a similar sized lot on a lake, and I've been told, you won't be getting any bigger.
Can we request a meeting with representatives from the ZBA and the planning board to find out? I mean, I would
Yeah.
like to,
It
I
does seem
don't
like it.
understand this at
Yeah.
all.
It really deserves an investigation.
Right.
Nothing else, just to kind of set a precedent that, and I don't think we were consulted.
Well,
Really.
the Lake Association would appreciate that. They took comments so when I said there were 2 zoning board meetings, the first one, they passed the variance. We asked for a rehearing because we had gotten new plans that differed from their plans. We asked for a rehearing. At the next zoning board meeting, they refused to have a rehearing and they also would not take any more public comment. So we weren't allowed to speak at all there. So
The concern is now they'll consider the whole thing moot since there is no request for permit and the offending party won't even be available.
You know,
No, in terms of this project, right, it's a dead issue, but I mean, I hate to put it that way to you, but.
Understood.
But I do think that this should be looked into because this just does not seem, at any level, this doesn't seem right. And I don't understand the processes that were gone through, whether things were ignored, whether town rules were violated.
it sounds like there was some favoritism going on if the building inspector was bending over backwards.
That implies town rules would have been violated. I mean,
Right.
that's what, we need to find this stuff
Yeah.
out.
I mean, again, it may be moot for this property, but it may not be moot for the next one. It'd be
Right,
great it'd be great to clarify. It says that you cannot go outside and enlarge past the existing footprint for non-conforming lots. Either that's the case or it isn't the case.
Well,
Right.
Jamie and John are typically, I mean, they certainly have an orientation, but as far as I know, they are not inclined to break regulations.
And I don't want to say that they
No, you don't know.
that they
That's-
necessarily did that, for
Right.
sure. What I can tell you is at the second planning board meeting, first planning board meeting, the result was they specifically asked the property owner to work with the road association and before the next planning board meeting, come back with a plan that has been okayed by both. He didn't do that. The morning of the planning board meeting, Jamie Jennison sent an email to the planning board with a slightly modified plan of his original plan. The property owner didn't do that. He did it the morning of, which meant nobody who was going to that meeting saw it. And John Huckins' response was, well, it's sitting right, I just gave it to you, it's sitting right in front of you. We said, well, what are we gonna read it now? I mean, so it felt like, for whatever reason, that they really wanted this property owner to be able to do what he wanted to do on this property. And we were shut down at pretty much every turn attempting to stop it. That's all I can say. In terms of what people actually did within that, whether the regulations broken, I can't speak to that at all.
Did he start digging out the foundation yet?
Oh, the foundation holes,
All right.
foundation hole was dug before he had a shoreline.
So there's just a big pile of dirt and cleared out land.
It's two permits, I think, too, because you need the shorelands permit for the things you're gonna alter within that 250 feet.
Right.
But they also, I think, mandate you get an excavation permit where you're digging close to a
I
lake.
specifically asked the town, because I saw him doing that, I called, and they said he doesn't need his building permit in order to do that, to dig the foundation. But as I mentioned, at that time, he didn't even have a shoreline permit. Now, my guess, in defense of this man, if he knew he was sick, maybe he was sick for a long time, he was trying to rush it through, it doesn't change, it explains the behavior a little bit, but it doesn't excuse it.
Yeah, it's not something you'd want to encourage them. to-
100%, 100%. So I don't know whether that was explained to people and people were sympathetic about it. I can't really speak to that, but I think there was probably something else going on that I don't know.
Well, it just so happens that we're kind of in the process, or I should say, the planning board and ZBA are in the process of, I guess you'd say, tuning up our land use zoning regulations. And they've actually been more accommodating, if these hearings went on, we wouldn't have heard about them because they never gave us the heads up.
Right.
And, we only hear about stuff oftentimes after the fact. But they have since said, well, yeah, we will let you know, excuse me, beforehand or, as things progress
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah.
So it's certainly within the realm of this current process that we want to say, hey, here's an example of a really bad practice, a really bad outcome already. that we want to be sure not to repeat, right? So I would think that, you know, it would make sense if we could put together a letter to the select board anyway, saying, we have these concerns, these things have been raised with us, and we'd like to request that you investigate what happened. Does that sound like the general idea?
I don't know whose responsibility is. I don't know what the select board's involvement would be. I'd be perfectly happy to call the parties together and sit down with Jamie and John and like I said, representatives from the zoning board of adjustment, and have some representatives from the select board as well, and talk about what happened here. Because I don't think, I mean, I think the general view would be, this sounds really bad.
Yeah.
This sounds like completely loose cannons to me, and I don't I mean, we can't do anything about the state. Unfortunately, that's a fairly typical story. But you know, the fact that they're saying that they can take these actions and then the only action that the town can take is to go back to the ZBA for a waiver? Come on.
You'd think that if you had this many things, the non-conforming lot, it's within the Shoreline Water Quality Act, and the paperwork out there, you would say, okay, if this was a normal thing and things were proceeding normally, all right, those type of things can happen. But to allow somebody to put a foundation in and then start asking, oh, are we going to allow a 3,600 square foot house there? Well, you built a foundation for a 3,600 square foot house. And you got a hole right now.
Yeah,
I'm just concerned that we've got a crummy looking lot. I just looked on Google Earth and I don't know the dated picture, but the lot is ripped up.
Yeah.
Oh, like I said, it's been a year-long process.
You know, a rich person comes in and says, I can handle the cost of restoring this property because I'm going to make this my lakeside home.
Yeah.
No rich people are building 900 square foot homes.
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, my wife and I would love a lot and restore it. We have a house, we don't need to build another house. We'd like to just have it as a buffer. I don't know whether he'd sell to us. I don't know what the process is. I've gotten in the ear of the people that I know are close to him that we'd love to buy it before they list it. We can save them some money.
Do you know what the valuation on the lot would be?
I don't. I know he paid $270,000 for it.
Because I mean, seriously, I do think that there should be consideration given to the buyer for
Degraded.
right. Well, and for actions that are going to be required to be taken to remediate.
And making sure there is actually full disclosure of that to whoever they sell the house, requiring that would be correct. We know that would have to happen, and we'd be happy to do it if we were able to get the property, but our concern is that it goes out there, people are interested, willing to buy the property even the way it is, and aren't fully aware of what other costs may be involved. And basically, the lake is going to suffer until that happens, with no intervention.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's dragged out for several years, arguing over what it's worth and who wants it.
100%.
Yeah.
If we were to participate in some kind of an inquiry into this, is there anyone who could, obviously you're one-sided on this, is there anyone who would be able to represent the owner?
So at both the zoning board meetings and the planning board meetings, he does have an engineer who represented him alone in at least 3 of those 4. I don't know whether he's still working for the family or not.
Do you know the name?
Yeah, his name is Tim Ferwerda. It's Ferwerda. I think he's an older man. I think he does it. I think he used to do it full time. I think he sort of does it. And I think maybe he knew Norman from his job.
Didn't he come up with the restoration plan?
He came up with the restoration plan, and that's who David Price was going back to, saying there are additional violations. You've got to come up with a new plan. I don't think David knew that they weren't moving forward on the building permit. So I'm not exactly sure where that leaves the restoration planning. They may just say, we're not doing another plan because we're not gonna build on the property. But you would think one would still have to be done because the new owner of the property is gonna be required to meet whatever the state determines has to be done. So, so either that or the state has to come up with a plan and say, this number of trees have to be built within a 50-foot buffer, et cetera.
I don't know if the state does that.
I don't either.
They can say it's required, but whether they ever enforce it is the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's clearly just.
If you put an 18 or 20 inch oak back in the hole, even if you, at best, if they, when you say, where, you know, there's 12 of 18, so 12 saplings, like, it's not gonna be anything like it was.
But there's more, I mean, clearly more has to be done because with the hole there, for example, if we were to do it, you know, we would bring the hill back to the original shape of the hill and do the appropriate plantings for the restoration. Somebody who's planning on putting a small home there may just leave that hole for who knows what period of time.
So is the current house on the property? The small house? The previous house is not gone?
He tore that down.
Okay.
He started tearing it down
Okay.
before he had closed on the property.
Whoa.
And the existing owner allowed him to do that. So it's been a blank show since day one.
Can we at least maybe get the word out to some of these people and say we would like to be consulted on 114 Flower Drive? At least, you know,
I mean, as far as future.
if anything happens, before any them or the boards, that like, we'd like to talk to
It
you.
does seem like,
If it's dead, then the question is, you know, asking the select board, someone used the word investigate, that's gonna scare people.
well, I mean, it seems to cry out for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do that, obviously, we don't have
Yeah,
authority. you know.
Right, we don't, but at least we can ask, can you cut us in on, if anything happens at all?
Yeah.
And then we can maybe, like he said, get some people together, ask some questions.
Well, in theory, as I said, they actually had a vote at a joint meeting of the ZBA and the planning board to approve, you know, basically letting us in, informing us ahead of time. You know, so I think that's
Yeah.
happening, but it sounds like we ought to go further than that if
Yeah.
possible.
I'm just saying-
I met with John Driscoll today, and, you know, he said, the planning board does listen to what the Conservation Commission has to say, and I think they do.
Yeah,
They don't necessarily agree with us all the time, but they listen.
yeah,
And
but that's a recent phenomenon, or
It is.
it obviously depends who's running the show. But it just seems like it's worth at least putting it out there, and, you know, obviously it'd be up to the select board or the town attorney or whoever, you know, handles this to go forward with it. But I thought at least we could kind of have a list of grievances, and I wouldn't put it that way, but just things we have questions about.
Certainly, we have a, you know, vested interest in the lake with all the work that's being done and making sure it doesn't turn around. But, I mean, I think this goes for any similar lot or construction. How did it get this far without somebody putting the clamps down? I mean, I would have hoped with the amount of communication between us and the state, I would have hoped that they did a cease and desist a long time ago.
yeah, but
You know, just the fact,
this seems to be the story with the
is that
state.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, or, you know, it's obvious they're not policing it. So unfortunately, it's incumbent on the neighbors to complain. If he hadn't gone to hospice and he lived in another 30, I gotta live next to the guy and I have to complain about the things he's doing. Just feels like a very uncomfortable approach for everyone involved, and especially when he's already been written violations. I mean, and at some point, I would have thought they would have said, the next thing is a fine. Like, you can't do what you're doing. I'm from Connecticut.
Welcome to New Hampshire.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say that. But yeah, it would have certainly been halted long before this stage. So my main question and hope for help from you in the future is, how can this sort of thing be prevented?
Wish we could tell you.
Well, now I passed the hard work.
Right. But I think it'd be worth having, I mean, you've ticked off a bunch of different concerns, not necessarily grievances, but,
Sure.
you know, things you have questions about, and
Absolutely.
the kind of things that ought to be looked into further. And then particularly as it applies to you know, the building code enforcement, you know, there seems to be a real, issue
It
there.
was strange.
Yeah.
It was strange. I could see them not necessarily being proactive about anything, but there was a level of enthusiasm behind it that was puzzling.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But like I said, you're not the first to bring this
well,
up. I've heard it.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'm not glad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but, you know, and maybe it happens in every little town in New Hampshire, but, you know, we deserve better, certainly. And I think there are people within the town that would like to see this improved, just, you know.
Where does the property owner come from, you know?
Hampton.
Not far away.
No.
Because I grew up in a town where like the select board was either contractors or relatives of contractors. And so, yeah, things went through like,
Right.
you know what, for a goose.
Right.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
This
surprise
town
me.
used to be like that.
Yeah. So would you or Linda or your attorney perhaps be willing to write up a list of these questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Things that are,
Specifically town
you have a
related.
better handle on what they all are.
Yeah, I'll speak with Kevin and Linda about it, let them know. They haven't seen this timeline.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually send that to them and mention to them that you guys would like to see sort of our concerns at a town level.
Yeah, and you know, I would think, you know, might result in we could include that with the timeline,
Right.
with a cover letter saying,
Right.
this has been brought to our attention, we'd like to see,
Absolutely.
you know, things be improved going forward, you know, and, you know, be kept in the loop and.
Some we'd like to understand what happened.
Yeah,
Well, I think we're probably gonna have to go and dive the minutes for all of them. At least, well, for ZBA and planning, we'll hopefully dive the minutes, pull everything up.
yeah,
Because it sounds like there's a whole bunch.
yeah, and this was
A
several
combination
years ago, I
of
guess, when
this
we got the,
and
when we
this.
got the variances and all the.
Oh, no, that was all this year.
If you could give us the dates of the meetings involved, the
I think
planning.
they should be on.
Yeah, a lot of them are on
Okay,
the letter,
planning
some
board
letter.
meetings are all on YouTube.
Yep.
I don't believe ZBA is.
No, but they
They
actually,
must have.
I think they took minutes,
Yeah.
in fact, they're quoting members that were there, so they were pretty thorough.
I've been surprised, by the way, how there's a bit of a lag seeing minutes though posted
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
on these meetings. They can be a month or more out.
Well, you always have to wait till the next meeting to, they won't post them until they're approved.
Oh, that's
And
true.
then it's, you know, getting to someone who puts them up there,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of it goes through Tiffany. I don't know if maybe
But
it could be Barbara also.
Yeah.
the right to look, to know laws absolutely
Yeah.
dictate how this is supposed to be
Right.
done. And if you need something, that's where you
And the
go.
agenda should be
Look.
accurate, so it should be on the agenda.
There doesn't have to be an agenda.
Well,
Yeah.
There's
do
no
we have that
requirement for an agenda.
What?
we have this timeline electronically.
I will send that to you when I get.
Because I can use that.
Yeah, not this latest one, yeah, if you could.
But that would help me go to the meetings to see.
Right,
all right,
well,
what
this
the
letter,
minutes-
I do have, I could
Yeah.
send that right away if you want.
Yeah, but
Dig into it.
that, his work is really good as far as,
Yeah.
instead of going around doing word searches on 114 Flower
Right,
Drive on
yeah.
every meeting
Yeah,
minutes, I know
Yeah.
exactly where to go with his layout there.
yeah.
And, you know, I can at least, we can start gathering stuff up.
Mhm.
And we'll get you something in the next week or so.
Yeah. Because if we don't do our homework and we only go in with, sorry, but if we only go in with his stuff, we're probably gonna get blasted.
Yeah. Well, we have friends on the select
Yeah.
board, I mean, I don't think they're gonna dismiss it out of hand. So,
Sure. KORN, as in Nancy, GUTH. Corn. I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just make a comment about foundations, though? The requirement in Barrington is that the footings be inspected before a foundation's poured.
Okay, I got that information.
Whether it happens or not, because somebody like that, if you don't call in for an inspection, and you just keep on, sounds like the kind of guy that would just keep on moving
Oh,
along.
there's no question.
Then the foundation's done, then the whole thing happens. But
Understood.
in the defense of the building department, they do require a footing inspection, so
But it's the homeowner's responsibility to
to call it
call that in.
or the concrete contract.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the concrete contractor would protect themselves, but
Right.
Yeah.
I think the contractor, the concrete person could also be a friend, or a trusted
Well,
friend.
I don't think they're answerable. They're just a contractor, they come and do the
Ultimately, it's the
job.
owner. Right.
Yeah, but I saw the house go up next to me, I can't believe how many times he called the people, because he had to get, Barrington says, he was within 6 inches of, making violations, and he had him out there, like, for every step, even after the foundation, went up, before he started throwing lumber, check again.
No,
Don't forget one of those.
if there's a required inspection, if it's not been performed, I mean, the town can take any action they
Right.
want, up to saying you have to tear it down and pull it out.
Right.
Now, obviously, they're gonna try to do everything they can not to come make a decision like that.
Sure.
But in the end analysis, they're within their rights to say, tear it down.
All right, well, thanks a lot. for
Thank you all.
listening to us.
I appreciate it. You have my email if you have any questions that come up
Yeah,
after this.
and we'll
Send it to me and we'll get you those complaints in the next week or so. All right? Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope I didn't go too long. Sorry about that.
Fine.
You guys have a good night.
And I
Thank
thought this was gonna be a boring meeting.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna be short.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have held it if I didn't know at least one big
I
topic.
was wondering, I said, there's no cases before the planning board.
Did they run out before it got to you?
Well, I was reading
Well,
his.
But you can have
Yeah.
mine.
Okay.
If you were more interested in doing the detective work on.
Yeah.
At least a start, if we could have.
Well, no, I'll send you this
Yeah,
other
it'd be
one.
nice to have this, and
Yeah.
I'd like to put, if I can, in the Concom share, right, folder together with all. the
Is
work
yours
on.
gonna be as fascinating?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. No.
Perhaps less contentious, less distressing relatively. Yes, I think we'll move right into that. Lindsay's in community behind us here, and she brought up, a longstanding issue in the town, and I think most of us are probably aware that many of our conservation areas are overrun with invasives, particularly areas that are, used to be orchards or open fields or whatever. We get stuff that comes in that shouldn't be there. And so it's been brought up that it might be a good time to have a public discussion of some sort, or a workshop on the issue of invasive plants and how we can, or homeowners can address them. And Lindsay, if you want to say a little bit about your perspective.
Yeah, I'm the president of the HOA here. And we moved in probably October, last October. So new, we're from Ohio, so a whole different, so we're learning the whole area. But when we came in, we noticed a bunch of our trees on the back of our property were like just wrapped with bittersweet. And we had no idea, and then of course all the dead ashes. So we're like, what's going on here? We bought this property because we loved having all the big trees right up against the conservation, so we're right up the back portion. And then we just started kind of peeling back, and we just saw the absolute destruction. We tried to clear all of the bittersweet out, all of the, of course, fire bushes, and we had to remove all of the dead ashes because those were also a huge risk. So as we were just going, we also noticed it was continuing to go into the conservation. So my husband and I have been going out and cutting and then painting the roots, trying to do the best we can. We've talked to arborists to try to figure out the best that we can do, non-invasive to try to help, but it's obviously a very large job for just 2 people to do, and we work, and I've got 4 kids, so it's definitely pretty busy. But if we can help and get the neighborhood, there's a lot of people that are from out of town that aren't familiar, a lot of people from different areas. So trying to get them educated and to figure out, hey, if this is what you want to do, this conservation is a big part of our neighborhood. It's what we all wanted to have, and we bought this, we all love that, to keep our trees before they're all dead or pulled over. This is what we can do as a community. So I think just is a very proactive way of we still have 3 homes that haven't sold yet, but it's pretty much full now with everybody that's going to live there. So if we can get as many people, and again, being on the board myself and being really invested in this is something I've obviously been investigating since October last year when we just kind of started figuring it out. And I've talked to Connor a few times, just being like, what do I do? So this would be my proactive. This is before I was even on the board or any of that. This is something I just did like a pet project that I wanted to do to really kind of educate the neighborhood, and any help you guys can give in order to do that, and have somebody who's a little bit more, that's their expertise, somebody who knows the area very well, and all of that stuff can be really helpful.
And I think you had some initial conversation with Charlie Tatum.
Yeah.
He's really the resident expert here. Unfortunately, he doesn't come to he's an alternate member, but we have an arrangement that he doesn't come because he chairs the Trails Committee, and we want to keep him
He's very
focused on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we were looking at Buckthorn the other day.
yeah, he really knows the stuff. So had you gotten any sense from
Not really. I mean, he responded, I think, once, and then I haven't heard again, but I haven't also followed through too much on that. But just, I know they want to put a bunch of trails back there. So I'd asked him, how do we help with maintaining those? What does the neighborhood need to do to keep this? And if we've got like dead ash trees, and I guess the beech trees are now in danger as well from something else that's going to take out another whole bunch of our trees. Yeah, so, just knowing and having people being aware of what we can do as a neighborhood to help with that.
Yeah,
So
we
there's trails.
we flagged out a trail there where September Lane kind of heads into the woods.
Yeah.
Going in there, kind of cuts over to the right. We cross over it's Substitute Road.
Green Hill?
Green Hill Road, yeah. But then there's an area that's kind of, it's all surrounded by a stone wall, and we kind of walk around the periphery of it, pull off stuff, but
What is the terrain we're talking about? Because I mean, it sounds like a lot of the problem is the bittersweet, which is horrible stuff, but that is usually a transition phenomenon where you're going from field to forest.
It does, yeah. It doesn't get as bad as it goes back, but then the area where the class 6 road is back there, where there's openings, it's along that too. So it's and it's traveling now along that road as well. So wherever it can get sun, obviously, and it's climbing up the trees. So it's not only just where all of the new lots were cleared out. Now it's also like it seems to, birds eat it and then spread it. So it's now along the road as well. So, and that road goes right between a big portion of our conservation. And
Right.
a couple resources might help. You looked at UNH Cooperative Extension.
yes,
Okay.
and I have that linked to a newsletter that I'll be sending.
Okay, because I know I've gone to some of their training before where they talk about, methods of attacking
Yeah.
certain things. I don't we're really focusing on buckthorn and the Japanese knotweed at the time, I think, but
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that I
also
think-
there is a Stratford County forester. If you look up her name, I don't know if they only deal with just, the good wood, or they give you ideas what to do with the stuff you just want around if you need to.
Yeah. And the Cooperative Extension does do workshops. I mean, I looked at their page, just today and noticed they had listed a bunch of ones they'd done in other places. But I think if we requested one for Barrington, that considering all the development we have going on and all the properties we have to deal with it.
Well,
makes
especially
sense.
if you as an HOA expressed an interest and you knew that there was going to be some attendance. Attendance is a problem.
Right.
Yes, and there's a good amount, if we could video too, because I do know that obviously, there's a lot of people, young families and things like that. But if we can get it, I'll be there, I'd be happy to video it. I do whatever I can to make sure I can project it, but there are definitely a lot of retirees who are very much like love hiking or really into all of that have just moved up from another state, and they would be 100%, really invested in being there. And there's been a number of people that I have talked to that that would be able to or would want to make the time to do it. So.
And I would think if we want to do it sooner than later, it could probably be done right here. And we know Connor is already engaged and aware
Here
of
he
it.
does.
So I presume he kind of calls the shots on who uses depending on what day or whatever.
The facilities?
Yeah, and we could, get it online and all that as well, so.
We're gonna have a new library.
Well, July, yes, we'll have that, but until then, I think the old library is limited.
And they're actually gonna close.
Yeah,
it's not
in
too
June,
far off.
yeah, there's 2 weeks, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Just spelling in the same way. That's nice.
Guys, I have to dismiss myself.
Yeah.
I have a work meeting at
Yeah. Okay,
West Coast stuff. But yeah, sorry
all
to
right,
bail out so early on you.
that's all right.
Anything you need to share with us? Or, no?
No, nothing yet.
Okay.
The only thing I'm gonna talk to Charlie, I think, about volunteering to do some trail stuff. That's about,
Yeah.
Oh, are you not on his mailing list?
I don't think
Perfect.
so. No, I
Yeah,
gave
take
him
a
my
picture
email
of
address
that.
and I wonder if I was too sloppy when I wrote it.
Well, because I can tell you that they did work just in the past few days in the Goodwill.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, because
and
like I
he
just
did
need to know, like,
send it.
because my schedule's tight, right? And so I work all the time, and so if I know like where they're working and I can just kind of jump in with them when I have, even if I go out alone and just kind of
Yeah.
continue on, you know, that's kind of what I need to do.
Person at the extension.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's all I should share.
Tell them specifically what you want, or you want to get on the list.
I will, yeah.
And, you know, come to the trails
Pretty good meeting area.
committee meeting. If you want.
Yeah, when is that one? I don't have, I'm not on the list for that either.
That's education.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's
Jack?
each?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it you and you?
And we have a question,
The
We've
trails.
already about the
Yeah,
trails
when's the trails
committee.
meeting?
Tuesdays.
Second Tuesday
Second
of each
Tuesday.
month.
Okay.
Mhm.
At
Day one, 6:30. You want me to send you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could call them directly.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Yeah, that's about all I have, yeah.
great, all right.
All right, sorry, guys. Have a good night.
Another concern too is that, you know, as much as we appreciate having volunteering to do things or wanting to get engaged, the conservation areas do need to be
Aware
coordinated
of all of that,
through us,
right?
right? So we want to be sure that, you know, obviously your property and your
Yes.
backyard. that's
No, we're
your
not
backyard.
venturing yet, no, it's.
Yeah, but we'd love to have people get involved. You know, obviously it's a huge task, and I've walked a lot of that property and know that there's a lot of invasives. It's pretty well choked if you kind of come in through where Substitute Road and Green Hill Road, you know, go out.
Is this mostly since the development has put in?
No, I think historically it's been there for a long time, and you know, there are trees in there that have been swallowed up, and you know, all the side of the road
I
is.
mean, it grows fast, but that does take a while when it gets to, I mean, it's probably got vines.
Yeah,
like-
there's a few veins, I mean, on one of
Yeah.
the maples that we saved, there was a vein that was probably as big as my wrist,
Yeah.
that was like going, like my arm that was
They
going
get
up, and it
huge.
was like, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, just, cutting, I mean, granted, when you cut it, it's a really soft vine to cut, it's really woody, but it was kind of just, it's crazy, like, we had never seen it at all.
The weight that is put on a tree.
And you could see it in the top of the tree, like you could see branches that were dead because it was choked out. Thankfully, we were able to save it, and we have saved now about 40-something trees on our property that
Wow.
we've cleared and stuff. But there's still, obviously, we're gonna lose 2 beaches now because they're already showing all of the like multicolored
Realize
leaves.
that the canker does not generally kill the beech. It makes it look pretty ugly.
Well, I guess supposedly it exhausts it
But
after.
is the canker the trunk? Because this is the leaves, this is
Oh,
a,
no, the canker.
There's another one.
No, this
that
is an
goes
ant,
after
this
the
is like one of those little
leaves,
ant.
right, it's a nematode.
There,
Yeah.
thank you.
But it kills the tree.
Because it like
Yeah.
takes out, kills the
It will
leaves, and then
kill
it tries to
Yeah.
regrow the leaves, and it exhauts the
No.
tree to the point to where the tree
It
is
says
just no
the
longer.
leaf disease will eventually kill them.
So we've got it on, we have 2 beaches on our property, and we're gonna lose both.
I
of
can't
them.
believe I've just started noticing, it's like everywhere. I can't believe how many trees.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
haven't
bad.
seen that.
In fact, I believe Charlie was showing us that when we did the hike in that,
It's so sad.
specifically in that area. We got up to a beach and he says, let me show you
Yeah.
what it's doing to the leaves, you know, so.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, if a tree's afflicted, he knows it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
But
he's,
there is some areas out there that are very thick with that. And then there's other areas that were obviously they were forested before, and all you got is like really thick new growth.
Mhm.
Machete to get through it.
oh, yeah. And again, there are other areas, and certainly other landowners that I'm sure would benefit from having some kind of a program. So do folks think that's a good idea that we propose to host this or
Yeah,
organize
we
it?
can get the big room, and maybe Connor would offer up to put it on the YouTube
Yeah.
channel,
Yeah,
Well, I
and
mean,
then we would have to
see,
promote it.
seriously, when you can get this, or it may be that
Mhm.
it would be a while, and
Yeah.
it could be something that would be great for the new one.
yeah, I think so. I don't know
Yeah.
how soon they'll be,
July 11th is
organizing.
when
Yeah, I
they
know the
start.
date. But I'm saying
Like we
when they'll actually be having programs and be
Right.
ready to roll. I happen to have an inside track with the trustees.
They said you can
and-
apply for it, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
no guarantees
But-
quite yet on
but-
getting a space.
But anyway, what she tells me is that they haven't even worked up rules on, who gets to use it and all the, specifics. So, this is kind of, should be a no-brainer, but, and I think they've done ones before. So anyway, we'll see if we can get it done sooner. I did also happen to be at Wentworth Greenhouses today, and there's somebody who works there who does similar workshops.
That's where I went to actually to talk about how to help, like to do it without like spraying or anything, and they were walking me through the process of how to slowly like.
Yeah.
You want to apply chemicals, you generally gotta have training and licenses.
Yeah.
So
And
there's
don't
like
even
just,
come close to water.
Yeah, but if you have the labor, if you have the back for it, there's certainly
Yeah,
lots of manual.
yes, and
yeah,
that's
the
what
trucking
they were.
committee's done that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's still some of our cans that we did on
Right.
can of.
Yeah. And much more to do if we wanted to take it on.
Yeah, and I think the area that was next to ours, I think that just sold is also just got a whole bunch of it too, and there's supposed to be potentially new building potentially going there at some point from the new owner. And I don't know the details and things, but if that's, again, it would be nice to have this information to potentially share with the new neighbors as they come in as well.
And it sounds like it'd be better to do it sooner than later, before people get.
And I guess the fall's the best time to get rid of bittersweet, but they said that any time that you can cut it now, I mean, don't let go of it all summer to just choke out the trees if you can stop it. But I guess, it's before it fruits.
And I had a serious problem like that on a field on my property that I had cleared with large equipment, and I basically have to make sure that I mow to the boundaries and keep everything down. But I don't have roads through the way, I don't have those kinds of issues.
Because that brings in, I mean, a lot of people drive their trucks, whatever else through that road. Who knows what their truck has been through or what it's picked up on its way, what seeds, who knows? So, I mean,
You can almost
I
make
find a bunch of beer cans
the
back
boat
there.
wash apply to trucks.
Right.
Because, I mean, they're big tires too, man, and they're tearing stuff up. So, I just,
And I presume the homeowners association would appreciate whether some effort can be made in the conservation area as well, or to maybe make an example of it. I don't know what we're willing to take on as far as labor and all, but I mean, we had a pretty good crew for that effort on the.
Well, yeah, because we signed up with Liberty Mutual,
Right.
and we've 2 years we've used them.
Yeah.
The question is, how often can we keep going back to that well?
Well,
So,
there's
going out for invasive.
potential wells. There's TurboCam. They have a lot of
Yeah.
employees. They've offered to do things with us. We just never seem to quite get it together.
Those are good programs, and most large businesses do participate.
Yeah, I've done it with Timberlands people.
Worked, when I was a manager at Cisco, we did at Agilent.
Yeah, but certainly if it's local, it's all that much easier. I don't know if Liberty Mutual is still.
As of this year, they were gonna do it. I don't think they're totally divorcing from this neighborhood, even though they're moving to Portsmouth.
Right.
And a lot of the people are still here, so.
Yeah.
It's something you want to keep in the back of your mind. Usually in February timeframe, they ask for applications for like a community service program.
okay.
And like I said, they've come out with the Trails Committee, and we went and got tools through the cooperative extension people, and show them how to pull off the little ones and cut and put tin cans on the big ones
Right.
to try to kill them.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. You go out there and there's Campbell soup cans sitting there. Don't pick it up. It's nailed. Leave it alone. It's doing its job. It's killing us.
Yeah. Although I hear it's limited, or it doesn't
Yes.
always work.
No, it wasn't. I think for everything they went after, they could find 10.
Yeah, no, I have myself. And so we can't promise that we're gonna get it all cleaned up.
Of
or
course not.
figure
No,
out
and
how
it's supposedly a
address it.
constant battle because you'll clear
Yeah.
it, the birds will spread it, or the
Right.
seeds will be down there and it hasn't quite come yet, and then it'll come back. So it's a nonstop, and we know that. But if we can at least be aware and kind of have, I am more than happy to try to organize what I can in the neighborhood and let you guys, of course, know and try to make sure we coordinate and just, hey, we've got a volunteer group that can go out for, so many times, especially if there's trails, we can walk around the trails, go along there, make sure that's all, whatever we can do also. I mean, I'm 100%, because it's not only just the value of our homes we're trying to protect, but also the value of the community in general, and keeping it, the forests, the woods, keeping it there and wanting to do what we can. And especially since we're losing a bunch of ashes and beaches to a whole bunch of other things, it's like, do what we can manually do, because we can't stop the bugs, or it seems,
No,
or
the
so.
emerald dashboard, there's
Yeah.
nothing. Is this beach disease? Is there anything to be done
No.
about it?
That's just, no,
They said it's supposed to be just as bad as like the emerald ash borer, which trees wipe out the entire population. So, and I see a lot of beech trees when I'm driving, so I'm like, this, we're gonna, so yeah, we're gonna try to save what trees we can manually if we can, you know, since we can't stop. the
But just
bugs.
from a public education standpoint, it'd be good for people to be aware of it, to know. And I guess there are things you can do in terms of not, spreading it,
Oh,
the
sure.
wood, and, if you are taking down these dead ash trees, you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to sell them for fireworks.
Right.
For a while there, I mean.
Or chip them and just, leave like
spread it.
everything wherever it's, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that'll be good to know. All right, so we'll see what we can put together.
Yeah, just thought I would just give you guys my face, so somebody who's living here and I'm there, I'm involved, I'm there for the next 3 years, so
Right.
I will be.
And I presume that getting trail built is kind of the first priority, at least as far as this conservation area for the Trails Committee.
We got two we're working on right now, one in Goodwill, which is back in his property,
Right.
and we've actually flagged the new section the other day out to so we gotta take that and pitch it to sell,
Yeah.
because we can't cut anything new.
Right, right,
And then this one,
I was gonna.
yeah. So this trail isn't gonna get built.
yeah, and they did
Real
do that
soon.
seating out there in the landing area that we,
Right, right,
someone's
And
paying
it's
for.
doing well.
yeah.
Yeah, we looked, there's green shoots shooting up, but once you get on the old road that heads northwest out there, it's like beavers through hand grenades.
Yeah,
There's wood and debris everywhere.
yeah. Well, we can
But
have,
but they also put in some water bars.
yeah, good, good.
Which is kind of nice.
Well, we can do a report on that piece, but I'm just saying in terms of the homeowners association, all,
Yeah, I
there's
would,
not really a timeline for when that trail.
I know Charlie's trying to organize another party to go out there and work on the trail.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe like this fall or.
Yeah, we just did one, will probably happen probably this summer sometime, just that we finally got one we've been waiting on, we had to do on the Barrington Trail in the Turtle Preserve.
Yeah.
And so we did that, but we are now working both Goodwill and this one and alternating.
Yeah.
There's been a couple parties that have gone out
Yeah,
there.
but it does sound like you'll have some good volunteers if you, when they're
A
ready
lot
to
of people with
take it
dogs,
on.
they all want, they want the trails,
Sure.
they're all like, ooh, so.
Yeah, it'll
Definitely.
certainly be most accessible for.
Yeah, the
Neighborhood.
class 6 road is not the place to go with the dogs,
No.
or kids, or anything else, so.
Yeah.
If you could write me and stuff, I can, I'll give your, or whoever, but if we have a contact in your group,
Yes.
we're gonna go out and
Yeah.
cut trails, you can share it with your people.
Yes, I can definitely do that. Let me find my pen if I put it in
You
here.
can keep that.
Oh, okay, perfect. Then I'll send you an email and give you my info and.
Yeah, the Trails Committee is always looking for people that want to help. Because our average age is up there. I'm the young guy.
Well, good. Well, thanks a lot for
Well, no,
coming in.
thank you for
and,
listening
in
and
touch.
being willing to talk. Thank you.
All right.
Nice meeting you as well. And I do love New Hampshire, by the way. My family's actually from Connecticut too, so when he said that, I was like, oh, okay. But, so thank you.
Yeah.
You guys have a good rest of your meeting.
Good night.
All right, we have a few more items, get back to our regular agenda. Did anybody get a look at the minutes? last
Yeah,
week?
they looked good.
It's all right. I guess we'll accept them as submitted. Treasurer's report?
Okay, in April, we earned interest of $1,761.59, leaving us with a balance of $798,996.31. If you take in estimated numbers for our obligations out there, which includes the CMA funding for the first part of the dam, I'm using the old number we had of 330 for the dam.
Yes.
And I think I put down 100 for the bed land on Ayers Lake. I'm not sure what number we
Yeah, roughly.
roughly. So that leaves us with, if all the other stuff happens, it still gives us around 300 grand to work with.
And, yeah, the engineering.
The
report.
CMA engineering.
Yeah. That-
Yeah, that's 64,100. That's something that we still owe. So I'm
So
keeping a
what did
little,
that leave us with?
It leaves us with about 304,000. But, you know, given that the estimate to redo the dam was for a bigger dam in 2019 before
Right.
COVID, I just left that number in there.
We have no idea.
We have
Until
no
the study's
idea, of
done,
course.
We really don't.
Yeah, this is just to get kind of ballpark figure.
But, you know, I like
It
to see
won't
how
be in
close we
red
are walking to the edge.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay. Anything
And
else?
the website was updated with everyone's name, although she left Scott Herron's name in there. I gotta get that taken out.
I
But
thought I
the new
mentioned
people
that
like
to her.
Matt and Mariah are in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mariah was approved also along with that, so. But she also has to do her oath, so I reminded her of that. She couldn't make it tonight. Okay,
You may we want to send an email to both of them, just say during regular hours, it takes all over.
Yeah,
10
yeah.
minutes, say the magic words and sign it.
seconds. Yeah. It's even quicker if you do it with a select board member, because not so particular. Yeah, okay. And we don't have any cases before the planning board. Just a few kind of quick updates. And I meant to, that was one of the things I was gonna pass along to you. I did get photos finally kind of after the fact of this bending brook. That's the Malago Road, Guptill Pit and development. And they're all your standard kind of straightforward, 9x12 signs. And I believe they are getting put, although they haven't built the trails, so I don't know, they're just gonna wait until it's ready or stick them out in the woods there or whatever. I meant to find out from Jamie if that's, anything's happening there. As you know, the town's kind of short-staffed without having a planning director. But hopefully that, I don't even know if that's really the current plan, but that's what they laid out. Sent it on to somebody recently. Oh, the folks working on the map, the big map that we're gonna have.
It's Stratford Regional.
Yeah, in Stratford. Said, well, this is the plan, I don't know if, we don't have anything else other, but we'd like to have it in the map. It's funny because right now that map shows a snowmobile trail going right through the middle of the pit, which obviously if you've been over there, there's a road, there's a cul-de-sac and several houses getting built. So I don't think they're going to be running snowmobiles through there if they have snow. But they obviously have to come up with an alternate plan. So
Doug, you've been in recently, I've driven by and I can see there's
Yeah.
one house you can see.
yeah, it's a public road. You can drive down
But, have they done anything with the big sandbanking that behind?
No,
those houses?
there is a plan. I guess I could send it around if you're interested, but they did come up, and this was a couple of years ago, I think. They come up with a plan that I guess was approved by all the parties that they have to basically regrade those
Right.
slopes and throw in some conservation mix or something to hold the soil.
Stabilize, right?
Yeah, and create this trail. So, yeah, but it's also dependent on this engineering design to come up with a drainage system where they're gonna get the water off of Malago Road to go down into the pit. So, that has to be done. And, it's not, the developer, I guess, is on the hook for doing some of this, but
Right.
obviously, he's not gonna create the,
Sounds like he needs to sell some houses to raise the money.
well, this is Val Zones, the
Right.
guy that built this
Right.
development, so I'm sure he's not, hurting for money, but
Right.
who knows? It does seem like it's dragged out for quite a while. But, hopefully that'll get done eventually, because it is a pretty central component of our trail system, even though we don't make use of it or haven't in the past made use of that trail, but if you're going from, really from Caleb's, from the town center.
The new town center takes on different,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Level of
and,
importance.
everybody living in that area, it'd be nice to be aware that you can ride a bike or walk to, Caleb's or the movie theater or whatever, get ice cream. If someday you can get across 125, but it's all
You can't
All is
run.
planned.
You have to first put on a chicken suit.
run really fast. Yeah, so anyway, the Satwasser interloper,
right.
we did succeed in getting the police chief to go out and check it out, with one of his officers. And, I guess they got out there and they realized that there was a little trail from the site, going basically the other direction, south, down to, the, Emerald Acres, mobile home park, and sure enough, it went right through one particular household. And they stopped in and talked to the mother, I guess, and said, "Yeah, that's my kids." For building a fort, whatever, but it looks more extensive than just your average fort
Well,
thing.
Depends how ambitious the kids
I
are.
guess, I've seen even fancier ones, but not on our land, so,
Yeah.
so, he said, well, and I asked the police chief, did you tell him to cease and desist, or, to clean it up, and he said, well, no, I didn't think we needed to do that, or it wasn't, it wasn't part of his plan. So Connor intervened, fortunately, and said, you really do need to let them know that it can't be there. It's a conservation area, So I was glad he
Some of the
laid down.
neighbors along that stretch, some of the crap in their backyard.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of violations. I mean, I've walked
minor
the
ones.
line just because it's not clear where the
Yeah.
property line is, and they've been there forever, some of them. But this is clearly way beyond that, and so I sent a note to the guy who had found them, and he evidently walks down there all the time and is really familiar with the trails. So he said he'd check in, or I said, when he let us know if it's still there a month or two from now.
It's too bad. It would be nice if the kids had some way to do
Right.
something that would be allowed.
Yeah. Well, if it was natural materials and not building a latrine or whatever that bucket was, yeah, they could. I mean. But clearly we can't allow them to be.
There's not much they can do in a conservation area.
Yeah,
I
we
don't know
cover
what-
tree stands, so tree houses are a
Right.
little more involved.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's where that stands. We'll find out if there's more to be done, or find other examples. The conservation subdivision regs, you went to the meeting, I know this like a month ago now, but
Yeah.
do you have any
Have we not had a
reflections on
meeting
that,
since
or?
then?
I know it was
Well,
kind of a lot to take in.
I didn't really, unfortunately, I didn't really understand the format of, I thought it was the regular format of a meeting where I would be allowed to speak at public comment. That wasn't what it
Yeah.
was.
Well, it's a work session, but yeah, I don't know how they.
Well, I mean, it turned out that I should have just barged in, which I did later on. Steve, what was it that we were discussing when I piped up and Connor said, yeah, do it now?
I give me a second, I'll recall.
Good, because I'm not gonna. And I was the one that was talking.
Well, one issue that I think we wanted to kind of press with them is the having studies done before, for a conservation development, and this is what the work session is all about, is new rules for that. And,
Right, you wanted a baseline.
yeah, based on study, and this is what my predecessor's predecessor, John Wallace, had recommended, and said that, certainly SELT requires it on all their properties, and it gets done occasionally. There was one done for this land up here, and it was probably because the state was involved, and there were some vernal pools, and I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah, and but that's what I missed, was barging in about the baseline. There wasn't a lot of discussion, but basically that, I think that you're gonna have to bring that, there's going to be another working session, and I think you're gonna wanna bring it up then as well.
Yeah.
But it got into, so they did say that it was general practice that an ecological study would be done, because that's just the way, it's not that it's necessarily required, but that is the track that things have taken.
Right. Except as we found, they don't always look for vernal pools.
That's right. That's
Which I
right.
don't know, how can you do an ecological study and forget to
It's not forgetting.
Well-
I think it's much harder at certain times of year.
Yeah,
I mean, in the
yeah.
winter, it's impossible.
Yeah, of course.
And the spring is obviously the best time, and you can do it when there's not snow cover, but it can be difficult.
Yeah.
But there was, I'm blanking on it. I didn't review. I did actually watch the meeting again before our last meeting was supposed to take
Yeah.
place. But I didn't do it before this one, and I just forgot.
But they haven't set a date for this additional meeting?
No,
So maybe
there was a
before that.
lot of discussion about grades of roads and, what would be allowed and what wouldn't be and how they would make determinations. And to be honest, I didn't understand a whole lot of what they were talking about there.
Yeah, but again, in the realm of wanting to do things better going forward, it'd be great if we can, somehow loose those rules so that they do what we would like to see, since
Yeah.
we're gonna inherit the land in terms of management and stuff.
It's interesting to hear, so I was talking to Jamie, and I think John as well about this. Jamie's perspective on this is that he thinks that even with what's been done and limited as it may be or significant as it may be, that developers are going to choose not to build conservation subdivisions. And he could be right. I don't know. I think that's a call that's very hard to make in advance. If he's right, maybe things will have to be changed and loosened up a bit. I hate to see it. I talked to him actually today, about what happened at Young Road and what's going on there now. I don't know if you've been by there, but it's basically being cleared completely. Now, this is not a conservation subdivision when you do something
Well,
like that.
that's the area that's gonna have the houses, right? And they can't.
Right, but I mean, there's no, it's not like they're separating things by boundaries of trees and leaving
Right.
natural vegetation. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just gone.
Well,
And apparently they made a mistake and cleared some areas they weren't supposed to,
Well,
and
that's
that's,
not good.
it happens.
But knowing the property, I mean, it got logged really heavily back
Yes.
12, 15 years ago now. And, what was left was so spindly that it all fell over
It
anyway.
was
So it was
pretty
almost
crappy.
clear cut to begin with. So I'm sure they looked at it and said, well, there's nothing worth saving in here. And unfortunately, that's the way they tend to operate, is let's clear it off and
Right.
start
Right.
over.
No, I think
right.
for housing, that is actually the preferred
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And,
But clearly, they shouldn't be going into the open space areas.
no, I don't think they are. I think that was a mistake, and they did get, I think Chris Barry actually caught that. And said, stop, you're not supposed to be doing this.
But that said, they do have a number of, runoff collection points and what do you call swales and
Oh, yeah.
pools that they're supposed to be creating, and that's going to be in the so-called open space. So,
Right, so that'll be disturbances there, yeah, that's true. But I think we'll have to see how this pans out. I can't predict that. Jamie seems to feel that the planning board doesn't really want them to build any conservation subdivisions. I think he's dead wrong.
how can they? I mean, they've clearly been.
Yeah, no,
Sympathetic.
I think he's completely wrong on
Yeah.
that. Whether or not they've miscalculated, that's a different issue.
Well, but given that the lot size for regular housing is so much, 3 acres now, assuming that more is better from a developer standpoint, seems like, obviously they have to do the calculation, figure out what's.
Well, I think there's also value to just the fact that you can claim this is a conservation subdivision in terms of
Yeah,
land valuation.
sales.
And I think that's something that Jamie ignores.
Well, it's not his business.
No, well, it was.
I mean, real estate,
No, development.
yeah. Well, anyway.
But anyway, I'm sorry, I can't remember what I spoke about.
I think that was it, the thing about establishing a baseline of what the property consists of. I think that was what you spoke to, yeah.
Thought it was something else, but I'll view it again and I'll
Yeah.
report out.
Certainly before the next.
Yeah.
A work session, at least I trust they'll let us know or we'll.
I'm sure they'll.
Yeah.
Is the 3 acre gonna stand?
Yeah.
I
that's-
thought I read the
voted on it.
legislature,
Oh, whether
Well,
the state overrides? I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't think,
I thought the House passed it, but it was going to the Senate.
yeah, I thought it got derailed, but I'll
Okay.
check. See the latest from the association. Yeah, that would obviously make a difference how it goes forward, but, yeah. Okay, I guess we'll leave it at that. If there's any updates really in the downtown and trails,
Well, Jesse
Yeah,
sent out
right.
something,
yeah, they
today.
are hoping to wrap it up. right?
Yeah, they're saying till they can still collect data through end at the beginning of June, so you got like a week left. They were happy with us going around and doing the data points, finding the opportunities and stuff in the area. And there's tons of them. If you go open the app, there's red dots all over the center of town.
They've got 3 more interviewing sites they're gonna do, and they were asking.
Is that what tabling means?
Yeah, I think they're gonna, be doing the survey.
Yeah, but they said they're getting people from the,
Well, they do surveys too.
yeah,
From
they're-
the team.
yeah. So one's at the
But
third
they
at the
want
transfer
it-
station, another at the fifth at Golix, and there's a movie on the mountain night. I'm assuming at the BYA ball fields on the 6th. I don't know why she called them tabling events, but I'm gonna find out what it is. I might be in there, but she did have a hard time getting people to go out and do the human part of it. Assessments.
Yeah,
I know I
well,
did a
that's
lot
what I
with-
figured, that's what.
I did it twice with Joyce,
Yeah.
and I know Jeff Estes did, but I don't know who else
How
chipped
many,
in.
I'm assuming
I don't
this
know.
is mainly.
I didn't ask her last time I saw her.
no, but how, when you did it, did you get?
Oh, we got dozens. Caleb's on, around lunchtime. What a gold mine.
Yeah, sure. If people were willing to stop.
Yes, and some people were like, "Oh no, I don't live here." I said, we want to talk to you. Why did you come here? Some people, one couple, we live in Londonderry. We come for the sandwiches. But a lot of them talk about the unique nature of the town, that there's no chains. So we didn't mention, well, you didn't see the Burger King, did you? People want the uniqueness, the chains. We did meet a few people that hiked. Someone had just come back from Winnie the Pooh with their kids.
Good, yeah. Yeah, I wondered whether there were any actual.
Not too many. I mean, I don't know if other people got some. She says thank you, and she doesn't say I wish we had more. I turned in my materials, and she didn't hit on me to go do more. And she knows that I went out twice, once in the pouring rain. Hanging out at Kalos was a little easier. It was a nice day, and
Yeah.
I got myself a
So
sandwich.
you don't know if anybody went out to the actual trails, the trail.
I think she meant to keep it in the center, and I think,
Well, we included, the Pooh Trail in particular.
yeah,
As a destination.
Did anyone do any survey work out there?
don't know. I don't think that was one of the ones that was offered that I saw. I think they want, the problem is, even that's the busiest trail, how many people are gonna show up?
Well,
You have to have a good day on a Saturday at Pooh, and you're still not gonna get near, you won't get a tenth the traffic you get on a Friday at Kalos.
No,
yeah, but it's more specific to there to hike on the trail, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're just looking for a place to park, eat their sandwiches. Since we don't have a picnic area.
I've done that there and at Satwasser.
Oh, yeah.
You pick up something at Pizza Spinners, and you can either look at people going into Market Basket, or you can park in the woods.
Yeah.
I go there.
I encountered a guy who pulled off right on Scoot Pond Road, the big marsh there, right? The Aaron Rookery, and he was just hanging out having lunch. He worked on some kind of road crew thing, but he just liked that Barrington had all this nice open space and loved working here.
Yeah, but we do.
Well, there's a trail right over here.
Well, we did tell people, talk a little bit, and yeah, there's a lot of people here that don't realize that all these trails are here.
Right.
And there are some towns around here, they have one or two nice ones.
Yeah.
I don't realize it's many,
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be getting the big map up on the wall, so.
Yeah, and I know one of the suggestions I put up was take that kiosk they built at the end of the parking lot, put 2 sides on it, so you can put, you can advertise with this program, but on the back, we put the new map up there. throw a couple of QR codes on it, people can get active, they can from there plan to go anywhere else in town.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, well, good. As far as monitoring, obviously Gary's not here, but he did say that, they had to move the next date from the 30th to the 31st, which is a Saturday instead of Friday. So if anybody was interested in doing that, it's on Mendham's Landing. I presume off Mendham's Landing Road.
Oh, I've done that, that's good, steep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is kind of a trailhead there, I guess, on about a mile in on the road or something, it's on the left, but we'll have to find out exactly.
Yeah, he's probably looking
Where
for
they
someone to
need it.
join him. I know I can't. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
on an airplane.
Yeah, I probably will, but, and I think they have, at least somebody, I know somebody from the Mendham's Landing Owners Association inquired about it, so.
Yeah, they go 2 or 3 of them out this last time. we did.
Yeah, so that's good. But if
And
you're
I-
looking for a walk in the woods, so.
Yeah, and I did do some training the other day with Cooperative Extension. They had a 2-hour training on understanding easements. Because wading into these documents, I feel woefully inadequate.
Yeah.
So all the legal requirements and some of the phrasing and stuff like that, that was useful.
Yeah, he did send me an interesting, because he said, I hear that we're supposed to be monitoring the Panish easement. And so, which I sort of been saying for, ever since it was established, and I wrote it, I said, yeah, it is, I own the property, the town owns the easement, the agreement is that it should be monitored, but there was never any period discussed. I said, I don't think you need to worry about it, but it's something that should get planned.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
We
it.
could
We'll
probably,
probably talk about it here.
we could probably do it after the fact, given the time we spent out there.
Yeah. Well, again, it's important to have a baseline.
Yep.
So it's never been monitored
No,
officially, right?
no.
So, yeah.
It's been the baseline, John did the baseline.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess, anything from,
And the other thing is that, you're mentioning the, understanding conservation easements. My conservation easement is not standard. Most of it is, but there, there's a section called reserved rights. And, I
You can do
took
things out there.
advantage of
Yes.
that.
I learned about that in the training the other time. You
and
can,
it was one reason we couldn't include it in the state
Right. That's
plan.
right.
This is the funding for, we had to go
Yeah.
through all this rigmarole.
yeah, as soon as the landowner wants to do this, it could bump you off from ARM or LCHIP or something if they don't like what the landowner wants.
Oh, that also kind of reminds me, we heard from Daniela Mobius, the Baroga
Yeah.
land, they're
Oh, right.
planning to put in a well. And I don't know if Gary got back to him, but I haven't seen the easement agreements and all, but I presume that's generally allowed for,
Well, that's gotta be
Okay,
really
I don't want,
defined.
but my understanding was that wasn't.
well, I know
And
they're
I-
very restrictive, yeah.
I only say that because I heard it all the time, that when it was suggested to Chuck about, you might want it, he was like, no. So I'm just assuming that a well was not put in as allowed, but
Mm.
it could be wrong.
They're putting
It's
it,
supposed to be farming.
not on the adjacent land, they're putting it on the Bordeaux land?
I don't know, she wasn't specific about the location.
Because they were doing something on the adjacent
Right.
property as well.
Right.
So I don't know, I thought that pretty much everything was off limits on Bordeaux, Chuck.
Yeah, and there was, and I've been wondering too, if they were planning to buy this adjacent property and they were gonna do some kind of swap where
Right.
they could carve out a piece so that they would be able to have, a farm stand. That was kind of the big issue.
But it wasn't on Bordeaux.
Yeah, but I don't know, she didn't say anything about any of that going forward, but, I think we would have heard.
Who would check, like, say they want to put in a well and they just say, oh, so we're gonna drill, who checks up and makes sure? Who
This is
monitors?
us. I mean, we do monitor the process.
So you have to know whether that well is allowed in these.
Right. Yeah, so that's why I was hoping Gary would look into it and see what the deal is, because we certainly don't want to have to tell them no, or, after the fact. We should let them know before
Sort of
they
like the town, huh?
spend thousands of dollars, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
I do have one,
If he,
speaking of, I'm sorry,
just on this
Yeah.
note, if he wants to run that by legal, to understand the issue, is there a means for him to do that?
Well, not easily, or, I mean, probably go through Connor, I
Yeah,
guess.
go to the town council and we would probably be charged for it, but that,
Yeah.
he may want to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if there's some question about
Yeah.
if it's not cut and dry. Yeah, no, we probably should, I'll follow up with Gary and see if.
But was she making an actual request
Oh,
to
yeah.
put a well in? Okay.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it
So
sounded
at
like
least
they
she's doing
were
it,
planning to
she's doing
do
it
it.
proactively then.
Yeah, and she wondered whether there was anybody else we needed to inform, figure out, but.
Nice that she's asking.
Right.
Well, yeah. You know,
Versus seeing a well rig set up over in that field and going,
Exactly.
Yeah.
seems
Something
odd.
like that, yeah.
Because not only do you have to drill a well, you have to bring power, which means setting a pole out there and there's
Right.
gonna be other infrastructure, so.
Yeah, no, it's, you're probably right, but it may not be, or likely isn't
Chuck was
allowed.
pretty.
Yeah, I know, it was like strict.
Yeah, but I mean, to say, okay, I want this to be farming, not account for water and power.
Yeah.
That's real 19th century farming.
Yeah.
He
It is.
didn't really say he wanted to, he basically said, I don't want it touched.
Mhm.
That was my impression, Pat, wasn't that?
That was-
Yeah.
Well, then it's, yeah, well, then it's not a farm,
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's called a farm, but if you can't do anything,
yeah.
it's,
It's
well,
pasture then.
It's a tree
really.
farm.
That's all it is.
Yeah, yeah, but even cows and.
Yeah, a little some, maybe goats, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Any other issues
I
to
had,
come before us? Yeah.
I checked with Karen and she said it was fine that I bring this up, that just to know that her conservation on, off Mendham's there, off France Road, has gone through. It's pretty well, it's
Karen.
been surveyed, they've
Yeah.
posted it and everything, so it looks like that's definitely, so that's 110 acres
Wow.
right there
Yeah,
that will be conserved.
yeah, I'm sorry, Karen, the last name, Gould.
Yeah.
Folks recall that was, she came to us several years ago and was trying to get our, I guess, help, financial help perhaps.
You know,
but-
and that, I feel bad, that was a misunderstanding, I think. She wasn't looking for financial, because she doesn't want public access, and she
Yeah.
knew that.
Well,
So I think she just wanted a letter of saying, supporting her going forward, so
It
it
must have
wasn't.
been before I was on.
yeah, it
Okay.
was a few years
I don't
ago.
remember this.
Yeah, but it wasn't really clear, I think, at that, and maybe she didn't know exactly what
Yeah,
she wanted.
Yeah.
But that's good to hear, I guess. I mean, it's a big chunk of land.
it
and
is,
it's,
It's- yeah,
you know, right on the, it's the Mendham's watershed, right? Yeah.
yeah, it
If you
is,
know, what is it, Holiday Drive,
right,
Mhm.
right.
that's through there. Yeah, okay. But who's holding the
Yeah.
easement
It's
then?
NRCS,
NRCS, yeah, so they'll be monitoring. I mean, it's good for apps, we don't want additional.
yeah, we need more monitoring, like we need a hole in the head.
Right. But,
She probably doesn't have to worry about NRCS doing any monitoring either, so.
well, they do. I mean, we have one that.
No, I know, but I'm making a.
I think they're pretty sketchy about it. They don't do thorough, not what we do, you know. And, pretty,
Everybody seems to be moving to drones.
yeah,
Mhm.
that too.
So what'd you find?
You know, so
Oh,
they even have
trees.
staff after
Right.
all the cuts, you know, they're gonna be out of business, but, well,
Oh,
that's good then.
Just going back, and then so part of what was discussed was the issue of current use, funding for the.
Back to the work.
Going back to the funding for the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And that was what the discussion was about.
You're
And,
talking about the land use change or?
yeah, land use change and charges, monitoring
Right,
fees.
right. Oh, yeah, you mentioned something about
And the
that.
use of the monitoring fees. So Andy was proposing that monitoring fees only be able to be used for the purposes of monitoring. I said, what does that
Well,
mean?
but
Are we-
what's a monitoring fee? They're called stewardship fees. I mean,
Okay, well,
that should be the way it's referred to.
But even there, I think his question would have applied to that as well. My comment was that it seemed to me that what we were confronting was, sometime in the future, and I don't know, it may be a long ways off, that our means of funding conversion of land from current use,
Yeah.
is going to end. We're not going to have income from that source. And we actually don't want to be restricted in the way that we
Oh,
can
yeah.
use those
Yeah, no,
funds.
definitely not.
And they definitely were not of that opinion.
No.
And I definitely disagree
Yeah,
with
no, we should hold our
so
ground.
that was the main part.
And I hope Connor would back us up on that. I mean, that was part of the whole rationale for hiring the
I
staffers.
brought that up.
Right, that, if all they're doing is monitoring, obviously that's not
Right.
a, full-time job.
Yeah.
Wasn't Andy's point that, that the fees that come into the Conservation Commission for that be sort of siloed and?
Yeah, be
Well,
restricted.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a line item where, in the budget, it should be for stewardship, but not just for monitoring, because that's not That's not all
When
that
you
it's
say
about.
stewardship, I mean, I,
trails. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, potential things that could come under there.
I mean, I thought that we should be able to use those funds for things as diverse as land purchases.
Yeah, I mean, that may be going a little far, just,
He's sort
and
of
frankly,
thought it
it's
was.
not ever gonna be
It's
that
not gonna
much,
be enough, no. Although, the other thing that I hadn't realized is I thought we had always been talking about a fee per monitoring session, so to speak. What they were talking about was a one-time fee, I think similar to what these people do.
Yeah, Falzone did that.
Yeah, and that would, be a lot more significant in that case. But that was it. It was a one-time fee. I had never heard of that. So
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Well, this is what, CELT is kind of the standard we're going by, I
Model,
guess. They require stewards, they put it into every budget that they come up with. And I'm sure the Bedford lands are gonna have a stewardship fee.
And those are ongoing annual fees, right? Or is it
I'm not sure. I think in the case of Falzone, it was a one-time thing, but obviously you wanna, price it so it's gonna cover,
Right,
some number
right.
of years. I mean, I don't know how you come up with that, but the idea is that it provide a nest egg, if you will, to keep doing it for some
Right.
period.
Anyway, you should expect that will be an
Yeah.
ongoing conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you remembered that, because I forgot to. I know you sent an email about it, but,
Oh, did I?
yeah. And this was a month ago, it's ancient history, right? Yeah, but we should remind them that
We'll be
it's
taking
not
on
just.
Ariba at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Hey, it came back, right?
It did.
Our trails committee should not be running on nickels and dimes.
Right.
I mean, literally,
Well,
and-
and what I've done with you guys is if they're doing something that's really stewardship related, I've come to you and buy us some signs, stuff
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
but it's
Because with the
still
375 we're getting, you can't build many bog bridges.
Yeah, but we could. I mean, if we had, 20 grand from some project, for example, Young Road, there's gonna need to be a bridge there, ain't gonna be much of a trail.
And I think the planning board is actually amenable to what you're suggesting,
Right.
to
Yeah.
those kinds of expenditures. I do think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that sounded okay.
But the idea is to come up with a standard,
Right.
offer, or standard routine where we collect the fees. And, it should be part of the development, because we know they're making a ton of profits, so. I remember when the neighbor came up with how much they were gonna make on Young Road, and it was millions and millions. I mean, who knows how accurate, but,
I wouldn't trust it.
yeah, well,
But it was sort of the general idea.
Yeah. and we know what the land sold for, we know what your average house goes for, so. Anyway,
Anyway, I'm sorry I couldn't pull
No,
that
it's
up
all right.
earlier, but.
yeah, no, it's good.
Before we close, I just want to mention that Barrington recently got called out. Did anyone here attend that Zoom symposium that was hosted by the New Hampshire State Conservation Commission Association? I've forgotten the woman's name who put it
Yeah,
together, but
that wasn't the one that you were on? Was that it?
it was, there were two fellows, there was an engineering firm that, it was titled Balancing Conservation and Development. And lots of people from around the state attended lots of other conservation commissions. And one of the two presenters mentioned that Barrington is unique in the way that conservation developments are the majority, and other municipalities and towns struggle to get conservation developments adopted, so.
Are you talking about conservation subdivisions or conserved lands?
No, yeah, conservation subdivisions, yeah.
I'm sure paperwork for those probably goes up to the state or somewhere and someone counts them.
Yeah.
And if that's been the way to build it.
Positive?
Yes,
Oh.
yes, we were called out for.
That is curious, though, because I would lend credence to Jamie's argument that more and more developers are just gonna bail out. You know, I just figured it was generally pretty lucrative, but maybe it won't be. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, and in fact, they were gonna, the woman was gonna send out a follow-up email with links to all the stuff that was discussed, and I can forward it to everybody if, when I get one.
Yeah, and I just got an email that has the presentation on conservation easements that I'll put out to the group too.
Oh, good, yeah. Yeah, they've been doing a lot of workshops.
That was cooperative extension.
Yeah.
And I think it was them and NHACC or
Would work together. Yeah, there's quite a bit going on. I've been kind of remiss on, I don't know if there are many or any of you getting their regular newsletters.
Yeah, they've been voicing their opinion on bills because of course they're still, you know, we're past crossover now and the other side's looking at
Right,
things.
right, yeah. But, you know, if you want to get some additional education, training, et cetera.
A lot more email in your inbox.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I open mine up in the morning and it says you have 86 emails.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, who do I not need to hear from?
Yeah, I need one more.
Rachel Maddow, you're out.
Yeah, but they've actually been having some pretty interesting workshops, and of course they have the annual meeting, which many of us go to, but somebody ought to. Since Barrington is such an exemplar, I guess we ought to toot our horn. But speaking of that, it reminds me, there is a workshop of sorts. They're doing a follow-up on the logging at Stonehouse Forest.
Oh,
And
right.
that's from Seld, you know, 'cause
Yeah.
Seld's land.
Right.
And it was gonna be a week ago or something, but it's been postponed until May 29th, just like next Wednesday, I guess. So I don't know if anybody's interested in that. I don't, they had a limited number of slots.
Yeah, John Wallace has been doing time photography at certain sites on that one.
Yeah, yeah. But they're gonna be just walking some of the land. I signed up for it. I'm curious to see what it looks like, but, you know, so have a report maybe after that happens. A lot of good opportunities out there. Anything else from the Trails Committee?
Related to it is the Parks and Recreation is making their Trails and Ales thing work.
Oh, yeah.
They've 4 of the 6 have been done. One of them got down to 4 people, but the others have been like 10 and 11 people in the way in.
And they've been mostly out of town, right? They go
Well, they're all out of
distance,
town.
yeah.
He looks and goes, you know, when people pay to go to some place that they've probably already been here.
Right.
And she matches them up with some local breweries. The only fall down was we went to Blasty Bow. And
You don't
they're,
like that?
except that they are redoing their production area, so they have none of their own stuff. So it was Sierra Nevada and Jack Tabby. Not that they're bad beers, but we went there for their stuff.
And their stuff is really good.
That's what I've heard. And we got, there's a couple of people in the group. Epsom,
Yeah. it's
Oh.
sort of, you don't-
What's it called again?
Blasty
Bow.
Wow.
Bow?
Bow. Yeah, it's an old Scottish term for the stick that you would light a big fire with. And they got the pine trees, the symbol, so I'm assuming, you know, if you wanted something that was pitch covered, you'd use it to light a fire. Okay. But we asked them the story because we wanted to know, right?
Yeah.
But the hikes are going, you know, they're well attended. They might be taking orders for t-shirts and stuff. A not sure she's gonna make much on that, because I guess one of the people that went would even consider it, I don't know. Or people gonna buy t-shirts for hikes they didn't do, but it's,
But do you think they're gonna continue it?
I think they will, as long as she's willing to do it. I mean, she's a part-time employee. I don't know. Next time I get a chance to talk to Jesse, I'll say, you know, how do you guys rate these things? I just noticed it because I was cleaning out a cabinet today, and I found another program they did a while back called the Granite State Growler Tours. No hiking, just drinking. Of course, COVID killed that.
But the attendance would have been better.
It was.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's someone else in town that's promoting hiking, and they are making a success of it, and the Trails Committee did meet with them to hash things out.
Yeah, well, it does seem like it.
Yeah, we're going to Maine next week. To,
Soggy? South Maine?
no, not the brewery.
Oh.
It's all breweries.
Yeah,
I guess we don't have one in
I was
Barrington.
gonna say, is
so-
that a possibility for the town center?
yeah, we're doing
Well,
Bonnet Bag Mountain
Mhm.
in North Berwick. And we're going to River Junction Brewing after in Sanford. And there's some spots left, the last I saw, if anyone wants to go.
Interstate drinking.
Trust me, most of the group's old enough.
Most.
I've already told you about the different trail work and stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, just on Goodwill, so, you know, they had the loop trail had been planned for a while, and Charlie and I laid that out to connect to the Ledges Trail. But they now have done a fork, so that trail will go through the Ledges, but they also go directly back to the Goodwill Trail. So it's sort of.
That's the part we cut, or
Right.
we flagged the other day.
Yeah, yeah.
And he did a good job. It was well flagged.
Well, you followed it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Does it go by those, there was one or two,
There's some.
the cellar holes?
One of them were right on the cellar hole. I marked it last time, and so I opened up Google Maps and boom, landed right on it again.
Well, that's the Rubenstein. That's the one on the slope.
Yeah.
And there's a well there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the common part of the trail, and it diverges after that.
Yeah,
Quite a ways out.
yeah, so it probably pretty much follows the old snowmobile trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that'll be good.
Yeah, but once we crossed an area where they did a lot of timber, we crossed, crossed over a stream, and from there we started cutting new stuff, but it followed something. Charlie thinks that maybe you and him did it 2 years ago. That's when,
Yeah, that part of it we did.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be confusing where that tees off. Gonna have to make sure that's clear. But,
once we get okay from SELT, we'll make it less
Right,
confusing with
yeah.
blazes, but right now, yeah.
I was out there yesterday with Steve something, I don't know his last name. He was out there with me and one of these back tank leaf blowers. And he was actually clearing trail with it.
Wow.
Those things are powerful.
Yeah, the current guidance from SELT is not to move a lot of the tread stuff. So, mark your trails like we were, so don't go at them heavily with rakes and shovels. Except where, like it's a safety issue, like if they step in here, they think it's a pile of leaves and it's gonna jam their foot in a bunch of rocks.
Right.
Do we have any kind of feeling for whether, I mean, the rules are that if there's a pre-existing trail, that's where we're supposed to travel. But there are places where you can't tell if that's the case, and we're probably not on pre-existing.
And some pre-existing trails go, they're very vertical,
Yeah,
or they're
or
just
just
along.
laying
Do we have a feeling for whether SELT is inclined to go along with what we're proposing, or is this shot in the dark?
Maybe ask John Wallace.
Okay.
If
We
we
don't know.
resource. I mean, generally, they're, I think, trying to be logical in that you don't go into sensitive areas or shorelines, but if you're out in the woods,
Yeah, we canceled some ideas because we had one on Caleb West, we were talking about doing it along the river. Who would have been opposite the Barrington Trail. And so the Barrington Trail was cut a long time ago when
Right.
these rules were in place.
Right.
We go down the river, but we do not put trails along it.
Yeah, so that's the only one.
But
And I guess the slope is.
you got cracks,
Well,
you don't
I
have
mean,
rivers.
Right, there are areas where they simply don't want trails,
Right.
and the fact that we're now putting sort of a T in the trail and having two trails at one point, they may be less inclined. I don't know, I was just wondering
Yeah.
if anyone knew.
Yeah. I think if you have a rationale for why it
Yeah.
should be there,
Charlie was having some app things, so once he gets his app straightened out, he's gonna go out, create a record of the proposed trail, get it to sell to get it approved for us to cut further.
Yeah.
Half of it's cut because it's the logging road and stuff, and there's still some areas out there that are wet.
Right, yeah, and speaking of that, I expect there will need to be a bridge of some sort over the outlet from your.
Yeah, I think so.
You know,
Where,
so
that's where where
You
they.
know, and we should be able to come up with more funds, I don't.
Oh, I said we should,
I mean, if, I know the labor.
And Brian is planning on building a bridge over by the Beaver Pond, and I've seen some of the timbers he's sawing now for it.
Well, we ought to be able to at least cover the cost of lumber or something, your nails or whatever. Screws.
He has enough.
no, it's the big thing, it's the long timbers.
Yeah,
Those are expensive.
yeah, I'm sure.
We've scrounged material from other places. We built a bridge out on Savwasser. The decking is aluminum with non-skid on it left over from a platform that was around a above-ground pool.
Mhm.
And it got broken up and broken into chunks like this. It'll never die.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean,
But, and it's, we scrounge when we can.
mhm.
Charlie's a scrounger. He's an
Yeah.
old New England guy.
Yeah, but speaking of this whole stewardship issue, I mean, there really ought to be funds available. I mean,
Yeah.
not gonna do.
Well, I've told them that you get anything, I will help you make a connection and present it here.
Yeah.
As long as it's, like someone the other day said, we really ought to have brush hog. And I said, I don't think we're gonna sell that. So they're gonna come.
Bit much.
Well,
But,
we're getting tired.
yeah.
I went out on the trails 4 out of 6 days this week. That's a lot for me.
Yeah, but I was thinking that we ought to, at some point, have a session where we talk about or have the Trails Committee come up with a wish list or something. You can put the brush hog on, but we'll see.
As long as we give it what they need, but we don't want to get in a situation, because at one time, they got, I think, $750 from the town when they didn't use it one year, and they cut it in half.
Yeah.
If we can just,
No, but that's where we budget,
Yeah. So if we can come to you guys with, hey, we got a plan, we want to do this, but,
Right.
it's gonna cost us $200 at Home Depot.
If they have a specific request, that they want some signs, they need materials for a kiosk, or they want someone to make the kiosk, things. And those are constant needs, and
Yeah.
it's not something where we give them money in advance, and they come up with a use for it.
Yeah, so that's something to consider as far as agenda for both of us.
So, still on trails, I stopped the other day at the Landry new parking lot and walked into the, Nippo Lake. It was very nice.
Yeah.
I don't think, that's still under CELT's kind of purview, right?
They haven't
Well,
released
that's-
it yet for,
Oh, they haven't?
What, release what?
well, I mean, put a map out, told people you can go.
No, yeah.
I assume with the parking lot, it's kind of like, it's open to the public if you build a
Yeah.
parking
Oh,
lot
of
there.
course,
And no,
yeah.
there is a gate now that's beyond the parking lot,
Right,
but
right.
I would think coming into summer, that would be a pretty popular destination.
Yeah, and that trail, you really can't get lost on.
No.
It.
Yeah, no, it's
Because Lenny's been driving in there, and he's still got, I think, one of the retained rights or whatever
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still get
he's
stuff
got-
down there.
Yeah, kayaks and other stuff is there. I just hope that, he doesn't regret it. That
Yeah.
people don't go out there and decide to either use it when they shouldn't or screw with it.
Yeah.
And I think the last I heard, they're not gonna cut another trail like up the hill or anything. I think that might be it. So it's.
But in theory, all of CELT's lands are publicly
Right.
accessible.
Yeah.
They don't really restrict.
But you're not gonna, there's no plan to publicize it until CELT
Probably
kind
not.
of gives.
I don't like to put things out there until they put out a map or
Right.
tell us
Yeah.
that it's sufficient. Now, that one is an odd one because, like I said, you can't get lost.
Mhm.
But it's their property. I don't want to jump ahead. That's sort of like, putting the movie out before the studio says, here's the premiere.
Right.
Yeah, we sort of go on their lead.
Yeah.
And same with Leighton Forest, it's kind of in the same
Yeah.
boat. I mean, literally, they built the parking
Parking
lots
lot.
in the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know, have they serviced that parking lot? The last time it was just cut grass.
Which one?
No, I believe it's,
Yeah, they
it's
done-
been,
they
they
done
built
that
a
gravel there.
proper lot, yeah, I
Okay.
believe it's.
But still, the only trail, they got that long one that goes out and you come back. All the other trails tend to go into people's backyards. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if they're gonna, stack some sticks or something to keep people
Yeah, I
out.
don't know
'Cause
if they.
we were out
I
there
hope they have
exploring
a
once.
plan, because there's some really nice.
Yeah,
places
there's a
out there.
quarry that's out there, and you know, going over to the east, closer into the Barrington section, there's beautiful, creeks and flow
Yeah,
of water,
yeah.
and,
Right.
but you're gonna need some bridges.
Right.
And I got the impression that maybe that's not gonna happen. From what I'm hearing, their Celt is overwhelmed between getting new people on board and the number of projects they've got.
Yeah, that may be.
And so I don't know if, it might be a case where they're trying to, like, what was it on the old Ed Sullivan show where the guy would keep the plates up on the sky?
Right,
I think they're trying to.
Yeah, yeah.
And we all laugh because we remember it,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so. is that-
No more trails.
That's it for trails. All right, sightings, what are people seeing? I know
A
there's.
lot of baby turtles.
Yeah.
Well, not a lot.
Turtles,
We,
but-
we always see a couple of baby turtles a year that have overwintered in the nest and, then they
Yeah.
go way out in the spring and we've
So,
seen
they're-
two this so far.
Painted turtles there.
Yeah.
I actually got to see a couple Blandings turtles. I
Oh.
believe that's what they were. One had its neck stuck out, so it sure had that.
Mhm.
I guess that's how you tell, besides the shape. That was down in Brentwood, actually. Enough people been to the Deer Hill waste or wildlife management area. It's a pretty neat area, actually. It's like 300 acres, and they built like half a dozen ponds, and there's beaver galore and all kinds of. They have it's evidently the New Hampshire a hotspot for pied-billed grebes, which is like a duck, but not a duck. They're kind of cool. So they hang out there. And,
It's a duck or is it a witch?
our former alternate member, Scott Heron, is really big in that area. He does regular walks with Audubon. It's pretty neat for a lot of birding. Other sightings
Porcupine,
in your yard or chewing gum?
walking the dog.
Yeah, hoping it doesn't
Right.
attack.
Dog doesn't want to suit for the lap.
I saw a porcupine in a tree in Satawasa and I learned that porcupines climb trees. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's-
They like to snack up there.
Yeah.
These were in the, packet. I don't know if that's for us or not. For a plumbing permit application. Yeah, that's over.
Oh, there was something going on earlier today.
Well, it wasn't on the file that I got from Barbara. So.
It was in these bees.
Look, speaking of turtles, has anything more come up about the nest?
Yeah, I was gonna email them and see what's up, but no, I haven't heard anything from the wildlife guy. I presume they aren't doing it because they were gonna do it in like April and May, and May is almost over, so I guess they found somewhere else or didn't get it together. But I gave them a long list of potential, and I haven't heard of anything that they took us up on, so. But, maybe next year, they have it anyway. I did have one curious sighting. I saw a turkey vulture, which is pretty common, right? But this was on the ground. I actually scared it up. It flew up into a tree. And, you don't usually get to see them right up close, but the big, nasty little hairy head, redhead and everything. But anyway, I thought, well, there was a reason he was down there on the ground. So I walked over to where it was, and there was a carcass, as you might guess, and it was a very small one. And I noticed all it was left with, like the legs and a little bit of entrails and the spine, the head seemed to be gone. But the legs had hooves on them, and little teeny ones. They were the size of a pinky. It was like a fawn, yeah. And it must have been like newborn or stillborn or something. But and I'm sure the vulture was upset that I scared it off.
I'm sure it came
But I'm
back.
sure it came out, yeah. It smelled pretty good, so I expected it wasn't done with
Yeah, we
this.
had 3 of them that were circling us. We were up, Catamount Hill, it's called. It's off of it's a Bear Brook State Park.
Mhm.
And I made a joke about, coming for one of us, so don't lag behind.
And I did also just finally spot our resident Cooper sock.
Yeah.
Probably the same one or related that I've seen in the past, but don't always get a good look at them. It was actually tearing apart, I presume, bird. They generally go after birds, but it was sitting up on a branch, just ripping away.
Nature's beautiful until you start getting thought to where they eat.
Right. What they eat.
One of the things, the hummingbirds were a whole week early.
Yeah.
They were earlier
Yeah,
than normal.
noticed that too.
And I
Now they're
heard,
wishing they weren't here.
Right.
I heard down in Mexico that their estimates the population of the monarchs are all.
Yeah, way down, like 90%.
Well, but I think this year was better than last.
That they're going up a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a reverse trend, but
Yeah, you do wonder.
they go by acreage because it's not like they can count them.
Yeah. How many million? Yeah, right. I had one other, just thinking of hummingbirds. I always kind of wondered, what the hummingbirds eat. They come up here in early May, there's no flowers open. I guess they go after the red maple flowers in the trees. But I've noticed, and I subsequently read somewhere too, that they will follow yellow-bellied sapsuckers, and the sapsucker will, you've seen the holes they make in a tree, and so the hummingbird will come on after and drink the sap that the hummingbird produces.
They'll also go after insects like black fly.
Yeah, they do eat insects, which are also those. Yeah, and they're also associated with the sap. But I've actually seen the hummingbird following the sapsucker. I mean, it's kind of neat. They have this little symbiosis going on. So that's cool.
And the bats are flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Eat those bugs.
Yeah.
Any other?
So you're a bird guy. We were out kayaking the other day and it was kind of like this misty, kind of crappy day.
Yeah.
And they look like swallows on the water.
I mean, above the water?
Yeah,
Or
but there were hundreds of them.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what they are? A
Yeah,
type
yeah.
of swallow?
There's 3 or 4 different kinds of swallows.
Yeah.
Most of them will be tree swallows.
And I'm assuming they're getting insects or
Oh, yeah.
they're hatching off the water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched them several places. You see a lot, as I mentioned, at this Deer Hill place. I was out in the field off of the Bellamy River. There's another wildlife management area right off, off Back River Road, if you know, it's a little side road there. But anyway, on the field there were like dozens of swallows, and a lot of them were barn swallows, ones with the forked tails.
Right.
Actually have a swallowtail, but they hang out together, and you'll see 3 or 4 if you know what to look for. I can't sort them all out. There's rough-winged swallows, bank swallows, cave swallows, and tree swallows, and most common. Yeah, no, if you see them just circling around.
They were just
with them.
constantly in motion, but they
Yeah.
seemed to be after something that was coming off the water, so.
Yeah, they're going after bugs. So keep an eye out on what's going on. All right, we'll see you next time.
Signing off.
I guess I should ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion we adjourn.
A second.
Aye, there.
It's all there. Jack, twist my.